more than I think more than Q&A. I think it's like just giving, because every time, I don't know if you might have the same kind of group of students, every time, because different people might do different projects. So that's the reason why. The question I had for you is the group of students that's working with the immunologist, is this going to be like split up into multiple groups doing multiple projects? Or like, for example, we have other organizations, they have like maybe 20 or 40 students, and there's a group of 3, group of 4, each working on different, or do you have one group working on a project?
The thing is that the students do individual research and they submit an individual research paper.
Okay. So when you say individual research, are they doing this as a analysis from already information that's already present, or are they going out, working with somebody in a lab and being mentored like that?
No, the first option. Okay. Basically, yes, yeah. They're high school students. This whole program was built because of the pandemic, and they couldn't like access.
Okay, got it. So
right?
it'll be secondary, yeah. So that pretty much is secondary data analysis. So in that case, yes, it could be, called a research, but I think it's going to be more of even like a review article, because we have to be a little careful with that kind of research, because what happens is there's information that's already out there. Like, if somebody is looking at, for example, right now, the hot topic is monoclonal antibodies. Or if you're looking at like, CD4 or, that kind of cell. So a lot of people, they just go to databases, they find the information. And so when they're researching, the question here is, what are they researching? Like, what is the research question? Rather, because we get a lot of these submissions that come as a secondary data analysis, especially at the high school level. So these people do a lot of like, okay, I went and found this and this and this, and, this is what I think kind of thing. So it's more of a, I found this and I think we should do this, or like a research or a proposed research, which, and typically research publication would entail some kind of analysis. Now, let's just say that there was no pandemic in the ideal, situation or setting. People would go, do whatever research, and they would get results and they would publish. But when you're finding secondary data analysis, it becomes like your research question becomes completely different at that point. So it's like, what are you doing with this? So I found this, information out there. For example, a lot of, majority of his submissions also come from the Alzheimer's kind of, area. So, okay, so you found information on Alzheimer's. So what are you doing with it? Oh, we're proposing this. Okay, so have you tried or have you tested? So what I recommend for those people is to, if there's any student that's going to do like a proposal type of thing, I think it would be better to do a review and then say that, if a research were to be conducted in this area, this would be something to look at, or put that into future studies. Future studies should look at this and the proposed design, and then put in the limitations that currently, because of no access to labs, these are the limitations, which is why the authors were not able to. So I think secondary analysis, I would definitely recommend that they should be a little careful, as long as they don't make it an opinionated, like an essay. And the other problem with that is like, there's a lot of similarity problems. Students like that submit work like that, they get really overwhelmed, because over 90% of these students, or even 95, are first timers and they've never been exposed to this process. So there may not be a lot of copy pasting, but there could be paraphrasing, not putting things in quotations, because they're always worried about page limits. And we see this at a gradient level. A high school student is going to be extremely like paranoid about writing a 10 to 15 page paper. An undergraduate would be very, very paranoid about writing like a 20 to 25 page paper. And sometimes this exists in the master's level as well, but that's where the whole, because the inquiries that we get, what is the page length? Does it include references? So it's like the typical school, mentality where, okay, so I'm only going to write 9 pages, but if I give 4 pages of references, that's going to make it 13 pages. And then maybe I can add figures. And so they're thinking from that perspective more than the content perspective, So, and a lot of people like don't realize that failing in research is not bad, because that's the whole thing. A lot of people say that, because I gave a presentation to this group of students in another organization where most of their concerns were what happens if I don't get the desired results, And that's the best part about research, because the only thing about research is you're reporting results. You're not reporting that I had success doing this, So that's the only thing. They think that if they didn't, for example, significant values and all that, so if they're not at the desired level, oh, this experiment wasn't successful. Well, report that, So that's the whole thing. And I specify to this point really to everybody that I talk to, that research, not getting the desired result in research is not bad.
Right.
So those are the kind of things that, I think your students would really benefit from, especially if they keep these basic criteria in mind, and then I think that should be fine, because some papers might be 10 pages, but their content is fabulous, like their language that they use, the bulk of the material, method section and everything. And so as long as that happens, I think we should be okay.
Got it. Yeah. So basically this is a preliminary. Like, for example, this is like the basic thing. They don't know what they want to do research on.
Yeah.
So basically they're exploring. So this is the first step, the secondary analysis, the first step. If they want to continue, then they go find more resources to expand their research. So the thing is with Gen Z and with the way like high school students is you need to give them some kind of guidance as to where to start. Right. So that is where I'm more focused on. Right. So I'm just laying the foundation for them, trying to help them figure out what they are interested in, what subject they are interested in. And they can make mistakes. They start off with one area they feel like they're not very interested. They can go. So this is more like an exploration, expanding your horizon. Like without a systematic, disciplined effort, I don't think a student will spend that amount of time in learning, right? So I completely agree with you. And this is just the first step in their future. That's what I tell them, that your research paper doesn't end when you submit in JSR or give your presentation. It's just the start. Like, okay, you want to do research on marine-based medicine or drugs. So you come here and we guide you into how to do research, the what, the why, the how, write a paper, submit it. But that's just the beginning. You've learned about it, right? Please don't form an opinion, and it's okay to not get the results that you aspire for, but it's the beginning. And after that, you go to the lab, you find a professor, you decide, okay, this is the major that you want to do. It also helps them with their college search, right? So it's a lot of benefits that are going on here. And like Gen Z, I do a lot of research on Gen Z and how their attention span is and their intellectual capability and everything. So it's more geared towards that. It's the beginning, right? So, and I feel like them submitting a paper in your journal sets a goal. That's how Gen Z works. You need to give them a goal. So they have something that is like an output, right? They've written that paper and we follow the JSR guidelines. It's wonderful. It really helps them structure it, like how the introduction, the abstract has to be. And we follow that method. So they have somewhere that they can put their results and get it verified.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. And it is a daunting experience as well, because nobody's, like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect, because a lot of these pre-submission inquiries that we get with the support system that we have, what can I do to make my paper more likely to be published, right? So their idea from preliminary idea in their head is that my paper has to be perfect when I submit it. So they need to get used to the process of what is like a review, what is a correction, because there are some papers that are really good, and the reviewers, they look at it and they look at the criteria, because the thing is, they don't want to be really hard on these high school students, because obviously you're not, frankly, the whole concept of research is in an area of your expertise. That is what research is. That's how it actually started, the roots of research. But now it started getting from, PhD to postdoctoral to master's, undergrad, grad, and then now high school. So those people are not here to kind of bash them down. They're just here to like you, the same thing that you're doing, to give them some kind of like analysis or some kind of feedback. Now, some researchers papers, they're like, okay, you're missing your research tool instrument. Like, where's your appendix, or what database did you use to, where's the randomization of this, because when you send, for example, when you send research, you're doing like a survey and you send it to 5 of your friends, that responses that you get are going to be extremely skewed because there's no randomization, so they're not aware of the concept of randomization. Oh, we send it to so-and-so, who sent it to so-and-so. Yeah, but how did you randomize? So how can you justify that this research is going to be valid when you look at the bigger sphere, right? So those kinds of things. So these are things that they don't think about. And frankly, you should know this. A lot of people are concerned about getting into college and what can I do to get into college. So from their perspective is, I'm going to submit and I'm going to get published. And that's all that matters, because I need to put this on my resume, portfolio, applying to college. So yes, there might be 20 to 30% that are very passion driven, because some people do take their research beyond their high school into their undergraduate and they continue. And the others are just doing it for, my deadline is the 15th. I'm going to get published by the 31st of the previous month. Perfect. And I can put on there saying that I'm a published author. So you can see that, and those are the kind of people that are very particular about their research being good at submission, and what can I do to. So I think as long as you tell your cohort that they're okay not submitting a perfect essay, because that's the idea of this. Even when College Board and IB and stuff, IB does extended essays and College Board does their research and seminar. They do the same thing. They have their reviewers too, and they're scored on certain criteria, and we do the same thing. But if the paper is good, deemed by the reviewer, then yes, it's going to be published. But if it's not and it needs something, then yes, they're going to give feedback to where this needs. And then some of our reviewers actually give positive feedback, like, this is a really well written paper. We'd like to see what the author does with this. And one of our undergraduate reviewers actually read a paper of one of the authors, and they took it back to their college. It was something in marketing. So they said that I will take this idea back to my university. And so it was an undergraduate paper. So stuff like that happens. So I think right from the beginning, since you are working with them at the grassroots level, I think if these points go into their head, it'll be a little more relieving for them, rather than like they getting very, very anxious during submission and the process.
Wonderful. So could you give the students like what would be an ideal paper? Yes, there's nothing like an ideal paper, but are there certain guidelines that they need to follow, or some framework that you might have to help them?
I mean, I could do that. It'll be the same exactly. Some of the points that I told you will be the same points that I could, say to them as well, just to get them to start thinking about the process. Because a lot of people, well, I noticed with other organizations, there was this sigh of relief saying that, okay, you know what, this is a process that I can actually do. Because a lot of people are like, what if it's not good? Yeah, what if it's not good? That's how it's supposed to be. If you were really good, you wouldn't be here. You would really be doing something amazing out there. So that's the whole idea. So if you're learning because you don't know. Same as the idea with research. So we can definitely, communicate this message to your students as well, like we do with other students. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. Do you have it now, or can you show it up now?
As far as what?
Any presentation that you might have?
Oh no, I don't have any recorded present, because it's just like an ongoing thing. Like if somebody says, hey, we have these people, would you like to? I'm like, yeah, okay, we can do that. So that kind of helps. So that's what I do on an ongoing basis. And it's very basic, just about like the whole nuts and bolts of submitting research, what to expect, and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I already have that. It's on your website. So yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Anything else that you want to tell the students who want to pursue research from your experience?
Yeah. See, the process of research is, now if you talk about passion, research is passion. Nobody just says, oh, I'm gonna, because if you really, you take a survey, and we've done this in the past. We took a survey of students who really want to do research and who do research for other reasons. And the percentages were higher where students wanted to do it for other reasons, just to kind of fluff up their resume. It's like, oh, I'm going to be a researcher or a published author. Let me do that. Versus some people who actually said, I'm curious to know why this happens. And those are the people who actually extend their research, go into their colleges, and may go further with that. And these are the really passion-driven, students. Now, for everybody else who's just looking to do this as an experience in high school, undergrad, I would say for those people, consider it like a temporary. It's kind of like saying, I don't have an option right now, so might as well just, do this. So if you were home alone and there was like storm or whatever outside, and you only had a loaf of bread and there was no other thing for you to eat, you would say, might as well eat the bread. If not, you're going to starve, right? So it's kind of that thing. So when you come into this bubble, you might as well do a good job rather than just, because the ultimate goal is to do that. And sometimes it happens that some students get into it with like ulterior motives, but then they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that this happens. So that's when the change happens. That's when the mentality kind of changes. So I think for those students, what I would say for the students is, first of all, be sincere. Even if you're coming with a different purpose of like saying, I want to submit this in my college application saying that I'm a published author, but do it sincerely, right? Because you have that window, depending on what kind of programs you're implementing and how many weeks, months, or a semester kind of long thing. So consider it to be like, oh my God, I want to give this my all. So I think that would be an important thing. And try to be faithful and sincere, because there's so much information out there that sometimes it surprises me when our similarity indexes are higher. Like, we get like 20% or higher, 15% or higher. And we're thinking like, so did you actually do this, or did you, maybe copy pasted it from somewhere? And that kind of is that desperation, mode that we try to not, we avoid that, because if a student is, so it goes back to who you are as a person. If you're going to be having these kind of unethical practices early on in your career, and you aspire to become a doctor, maybe a nurse, or maybe somebody with a responsibility, the personality doesn't change. It's proved by research. Situations change. Very few people change, kind of thing. They can make some modifications, but their basic mentality is the same. So that's what I tell students. So if that's going to be your thing now, you're basically showing that's rooted in you, and you're going to continue that. So try not to do that, because that reflects bad on you. So your research paper is not going to be bad, but your practice is going to be bad. Because here you have a paper with a 25% similarity index, and you're telling me that you're, researching on, like you said, marine biology or something like that. So those kinds of things. So start with, and attention to detail. I would say that's really important, because a lot of people, even though we have guidelines out there, like if you go to our website and if you go on the homepage and you click on how to submit, there's like this whole section like walks you like through the whole process. But we still get a question, how do I submit to your journal? Well, did you go to the website? Things like that. And then guidelines like, oh, does the font need to be that? There's, submission guidelines that tell you. We even have a publication template, like a Microsoft template that you can download and just follow that template. But,
that's what we do. Yeah, that's what I do. I found that your template was very easy to follow. It had all the instructions, like labeling the diagrams right from the figures. It was very easy to follow kind of guidelines. Yeah,
exactly. So you recognize that. So now imagine like if you were in our position, if you were us right here, and you get a question like, what is my figure, or what does this need to be? Something about formatting. So your immediate question would be like, clearly, maybe you didn't read, or you don't want to read, that kind of thing. So that whole information availability is like so rampant right now that everybody wants to take the easy way out. But I think they need to be conditioned to the idea that if I'm going to be doing this, I need to be used to the rigor of things. And that is the reason why nothing's going to be handed to me. Just like you can't go to Columbia or Dartmouth and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I want to be admitted in your college because look at me, I'm great. That's not going to happen. So I think that's how it is in every walk of life. And as long as they know, so from similarity to following the submission guidelines to following the formatting guidelines, I think the last thing they need to be scared of is what will happen if my research doesn't, because the only thing you're doing is, if you're hoping to get a certain result and if you don't get it, then you're reporting that and saying that, wow, I tried this, but it didn't work. And you give a fantastic explanation of why that didn't work. And that is research, because somebody else will pick up the same method that you did. They will reference you, and then they will work on that research and you'll get the credit for it. Because, I never had this idea, but I saw this person doing research on this. They tried XYZ. They weren't able to do it. I made a modification as they suggested, and this is the result that I got. So that's a great achievement in itself, because, Einstein wasn't successful in everything he did. Freud wasn't successful in everything he did. Like, these people were ridiculed. Like, if you go back to the history of all people who were great, they were actually ridiculed for their ideas. They were like, the common thing was like, what are you talking about? That's a really idiotic idea kind of thing, So that's the whole thing. If you think your idea is unique, don't be scared because you need it to be perfect. So I would highly beat that point all the time, because a lot of students get very anxious with this. And then following the databases that I told you. So are these students accessing their libraries, or they're going through your portal where you have subscriptions to different databases to get the information? How do they get the info?
Like, you can suggest that at the moment our expert gives them access to that. Okay. Some of the articles that are accessible only to experts, they are given that. Yeah, right. Yeah. But if you have an alternate database where they can look for, so please let us know. I'll include that as well.
Typically it goes, because these are institutional subscriptions. So either it could be their high schools, or either it could be you. I don't know if you're database or medical databases. They're always like 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is a good one. Academic Source Complete is another one. CINAHL is another one. So these are databases that they go through their libraries, and they provide, because these are institutional. So accessing those databases to get that research. And then the other thing is, like, as long as the research is not very old, like if you're trying to cite something that was done in like 1981, that it's not relevant, because every 10 years trends change. So I think from that perspective, getting something that's within 10 years would be a little more beneficial, or even 5 years is more beneficial, unless it's something that has never been done before. There's nothing out there, and that's where you can say that I looked for this. And you can also get some similarity, like articles that may not be that, but something suggesting that this is something that, for example, like right now in the topic of technology, of course AI was never present in the 1980s, right? So if somebody were to do research on AI or something like that, right, even for example cybersecurity, this was not a topic that people talked about in the 1990s. So if you're citing like a paper from the 1985s or whatever, that's not going to have any info on that. So that's what I mean. Relevant, research, recent research, stuff like that would really be beneficial when they do their research, their initial review. And then I also feel that review of literature is really important, because if you have an idea, you want to, for example, if you want to open a new company or a business or whatever, the first thing it'll make sense for you to see who else is doing this, who else has done this, what success rate did they have, or maybe find out statistics on like what is the market. That's exactly what background review of literature is. So if you're doing selecting a topic, let me find information on this topic and cite those sources. And this is where I found this. This is where I found this. And based on that, you're making conclusions on what direction you want to take with your research. So I think that would be very important, because some authors do not have that section at all, like, background or review of literature. They just dive into in the introduction, and then they just go boom into the methods. This is what I did. If you found a topic, it wasn't a novel topic, or it was, but what kind of research did you do in that? So that background. So I think all these components put together, and then, of course, methods is, let me see, like, of course, people that are doing research, they actually report the methods, but for even secondary analysis, methods are like, T-tail test, ANOVA test, what kind of test did you use? How did you come up with this? How did you randomize this whole process? And then once you have that, you report the results. Graphs and figures always help, because so this person who's doing research in like marine biology, he needs to understand his audience is not marine biologists. his audience is probably like a history major or an English major who suddenly says, who's interested in like, algae derived supplements. And he probably, hey, you know what? I think I heard about this on the news. Let me read about it. But now he gets to this paper and he's reading this bunch of like terminology that he's like, what is this? Like, I'm not understanding this. So that's not the reason. And that's the reason why we are multidisciplinary, that anybody from any discipline can go to our paper, so our reviewers do comment on, say, this paper is too technical, explain in your discussion what this means. And you'll notice this happens, it's very common with like hardcore sciences, biology / medicine, papers. A lot of people like will do abbreviations, T1D, TID, IBS, it's like, okay, I understand, but why are you not explaining what this means? So because you're not writing it for the doctors that who are going to read this and say, oh yeah, I got it. This is a global audience. Like when you're published, the earth is reading it. Like, so if somebody is sitting like somewhere in Scandinavia and wants to read this, and who maybe is, I don't know, whatever other major, he needs to understand this, she needs to understand it. That's the idea. So as long as they can get it to the level where they're doing all explanations, not keeping it technical, I think that would be important. And even people who do like physics, statistics research and stuff, these papers are like a bunch of formulas without explanations. It's like, okay, so what am I going to do with this? So if this is a derivative of this, what does that mean in the real world? You're telling me du over dx is whatever. Okay, so what do I do with that information, right? So I think that whole cross understanding is really important. That like if you were to walk into a doctor's, if you were a patient, a doctor walks in and just throws out this thing at you, saying that you've got low level of this and you've got this and you've got this, you're going to be like, I don't know what that means, right? Can you just so their mindset, I think that change of mindset is important. And so if they follow those criteria and then finally in the discussion, that's where they get to actually outshine and prove themselves as like good writers, how they're explaining the phenomenon, not just like, I've got this good discussion from this paper, I'm just going to put it in here, and that makes sense. Or paraphrasing, I think that, and then they tie all this up into the conclusion. And like you said, since you already have our template, future research, what direction other people should take, their limitations, and then references need, we're going to start really honing on the references being solid, because a lot of people, might not understand the importance of having many references, and that might not, work, because you need to be able to, as a researcher, go to these different, papers, sites, find these references, and, at least have a good 20 plus, reference base, just to make yourself understand the process. And that's important. So I think all this combined would be great, to where you can say that, oh, wow, this author has done their work, and definitely they are, interested in the process. So just this idea for them, just this idea to say that, okay, you're here, you might as well do it. Yeah. So that, I think that would be really like great in the end for them. So I think that's pretty much all I have as far as now from our perspective, like you and me, we know that the process is not that hard, but it's just the whole, the outcome, people looking for the outcome, they get frustrated. People not understanding the process, they get frustrated. So I think that's kind of the thing that we need to advise the authors. That's it.
Got it. Yeah, that's pretty comprehensive. And I like being more organized. And also, the kids, they really want to do well. They just need the kind of guidance that they need. And I've broken it into manageable parts. Like you mentioned, like 20 references. So in the beginning, they need to decide on, I give them references and places and databases where they can go get these papers and like list them out. So I break it down, whatever you've mentioned, I try to break it down over different weeks and make them work on it. Right? Instead of telling them that, hey, write this paper all at once. That's very overwhelming. So I make them, So it's first the outline. We start with, what is your research question? Right? And then we find out, like, help them find out where you can get these sources and everything, right? And then we sort of write the outline, then the introduction, the body, then the conclusion. That's it. Over weeks, they do this process. Yeah. And also references are very important. We do the APA reference, and also we ask them that they reference papers or read papers that have been peer reviewed or are scientific journals themselves.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think that is very important, because otherwise these are not blogs. You're not writing magazine articles. So you definitely, scientific research is very important. And some students actually do something personal that is personal to them. Like one of our students in the past has done a paper on a skin condition that they had, and they wanted to see why does this happen. But it's fantastic because they continue to do that through their college, and they even got into a PA school, became a PA, and now works in dermatology. You see, so that's kind of like some people are really like, they really take this seriously.
Yeah.
So
that's right. I had a student in summer. He has ADHD and he takes medication. So he did research as to what is the neurological condition behind it. Why is he the way he is? Then I had another student, this girl's brother suffers from autism. So she sort of did research on if essential oils may perhaps help him calm down. The scientific, it's not right like putting a picture of the essential oil. She drew the molecular makeup of the components within the essential oil. She researched it. So a lot of students who come in, they come in for personal reasons, trying to find an answer to what they're curious about and what they are going through. Right.
And that's a great example. That's a great example, because like just even with we do get a lot of submissions with ASD, like autism spectrum disorder. We've got some, ADHD as well. The CBD thing that you said, now that's a really good example of secondary, research, because clearly in a primary setting, you're not going to be able to find 50 subjects, subject them to a 6-week or an 8-week CBD therapy, and report the results. So this is where you go to that secondary data analysis, look at those research papers or research that's already done and they reported results, get like 5 or 6 of those together, and say that based on this, then you draw your analysis, because then that's going to be a would be could be kind of thing. It's not just going to say, oh, I did this, so we reported these results, like that kind of thing. Like, for example, recently we had a paper that was submitted where a person was analyzing the efficacy of treatments between allopathy and homeopathy. And I'm like, that's not a comparison, because one, you cannot, I'm not going to take like those white pills if I have a headache and expect it to work like Tylenol, because that's not going to happen. And if you're going to subject both the subjects to like a 6-week, treatment protocol, and you're saying that, yes, allopathic medication was reported to be better, of course it's going to be. Because homeopathy is something that you take over a period of time, and you see the gradual improvement. It's more like a lifestyle / maybe even some people do it for preventative reasons and stuff. So those kind of things. So that right there was like, no, if you really want to do this, you need to either address the limitation of what homeopathy does, and then that's going to solidify, versus saying it's like choosing a handicapped person and a proper person and saying, look, the person with hands and legs finished the race. Of course they're going to finish the race compared to the person on crutches, right? So that kind of stuff, so that's a great example that you gave about, a person wanting to do that kind of research. So now, so they should understand this process really well. But I think your method of guiding them, your method of doing that step-by-step thing, I think it's great, because that's going to work. So what a lot of professors do that work at universities that work with research. So if they had, like, for example, from January to April, they say like by January 15th, now let students do the abstract in the end.
Yes.
Because that's when they condense,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the problem with that is because the abstract is only, I think our website is 250 or 200 or something like that. That's very difficult to put the abstract, but that's the practice. Because then after they graduate with your program, they're going to be so appreciative of you, because they're like, how can I leave this out? How can I leave that out? Well, figure it out.
Yes.
That's how you do it.
It's like an elevator pitch, right? Be prepared. Absolutely. It's an elevator pitch. You are in the elevator and you meet somebody you're not going to talk about the 2,000 word research paper. You're going to recite your abstract. That's extremely important.
Yep, absolutely. So what they do at these universities is they have these timelines saying, so if they start on January 1, January 15th, your introduction is due. And they're like, all right, now you need to start working on your discussion or your methods. Your thing is due by like February 5th. So what happens, like you said, with the whole Gen Z and like keeping them on so that really keeps them focused. And they do like weekly monitoring just to make sure there's not like a, cramming overnight mentality, like, oh, this is due tomorrow at 8, I need to work all night on it. Those are not gonna, work. So things like that. I think so that system that you're following is really good. And hopefully, as they go through the process, I think they will be able to do really good.
Yeah. And I also, what I do is I help them research by asking them questions, right? So they need to question everything, right?
Yes, of course.
Like even the paragraph that they write, it is a mini research in itself. It's supposed to have an introduction, middle, and conclusion, and evidence in it. So that is the amount of care that they need to take. So what I tell them is just follow the process, like meet your deliverables every week. So it's like we are broken down into bits. In the end, you're just going to take them all together and make them whole, revise, like look over again and again and make it wholesome. So that's what we were looking at. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that this is great. I mean, as far as, from your perspective, the things that you're doing is great. As long as the students follow, and of course, nobody's going to be perfect. So they realize that, they move on. There's room for correction, not to be dejected if something is not working, because that's how life works. You don't get everything you want. I think that, so as long as you explain to them that there's no failure in research, there's no failure. Anything that you do is just that you're investigating and reporting. That's the thing. The success is whatever you reported, not I was hoping to get this and this is what I got and I failed. No, this is what I got and I'm reporting it. That's it.
Yeah. And so we are aiming for the next cycle when you open up for high schoolers. I forget when you're going to open it.
So ours is like November is our next deadline, end of November. And when I say the months, these are all the end of the month. So it's November, February, May, and August.
Okay, I think we will target for the February, so they will be ready for it, right?
Sure.
Because we plan to start in November, so they'll have enough time. The goal is by February, when you open up, they would submit their papers for review.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. That'd be perfect. Yeah. So I think that should be good.
Okay. Right. Okay.